Hello there and a very warm welcome to the Morning Cafe. My name is Leangare and today we have a lot lined up for you, so you better stay tuned until the end, talking about how to start a business and where you should begin in raising finances. We'll be talking to an economist about that for you. Now, let's just take a look at what's happening on the roads before we go too far. I want us to look at the area around Nairobi Central. And this looks like Moi Avenue is faring on very well. The traffic seems to be flowing. Very little traffic, if not any at all, along Moi Avenue. Of course, also State House Road looks just the same. The roads are more open than usual. Let's just take a look at Nairobi National Museum area. The roads seem to be very open, by the way. It seems like there's very little traffic, if not any at all. Let's just look at Ring Road, that's Ngara area. Just a little bit of traffic, very minimal though, but not that much, enough to get you to where you're going, hopefully in good time. Let's just look at another area here. That's Jogoo Road. Usually very, very busy with traffic, but today we're seeing that the roads are open towards the roundabout just along Jogoo Road that connects all the way to town. Seems like there's just minimal traffic at the roundabout, but the road is fairly clear. Seems like most of the roads are open at this time, just like yesterday. Around 7 a.m. seems like most of you are having a good time on the road. Let's look at Juja Road. Juja Road is also fairly open, just a little bit of traffic, but not so much. Let's just look at one more place, Limuru Road. That's looks very open in terms of traffic. Of course, also Muthaiga Road there, as you can see, it's fairly open. Basically, the roads on as it is right now, 7 a.m., seems like traffic has been flowing smoothly and may continue to be the case as we move on. However, I have my guest in studio, and his name, Areba Omoyo. Good to see you, Areba. I don't know if you can hear me, Areba. Hello there. Areba, can you hear me? I don't know if he can hear me. Areba, how are you? Well, as we try and fix what's happening there with Areba, just moving on to the newspaper review, let's just look at the dailies. I don't know if my director can tell me if Areba is able to hear me. Areba, can you hear me?
Good morning.
Good morning. Hello.
Good morning, Lea.
Hi, Areba Omoyo. Good to see you, political commentator, joining us today for the daily review. We're looking at the People Daily right now, Areba. And on the front page, we can see there, stay put or move on, Ruto's tough options.
I think, can you hear me there?
Yes, I can hear you.
I think the die has already been cast. Where we are right now is that if you are not ready to follow what the president is saying, then there is no space for you. That is what everybody is being told right now. But for me, and as I always say, is that the interest right now, we have now relegated the socio-economic state of the country to the back pages. Now we are already back to politics as the way we are meant to be.
Well, it seems like politics is back to normal. Yes, indeed, Areba. Well, this story in page 4, just further to what this story is talking about, the available options for Ruto after Senate setback. This story talking about a political, basically, the deputy president can now quit, according to some, to form his own party or stay put and strive to attract public sympathy. Do you think this is the way he should go?
I think my thinking is that the marriage between President Uhuru and Ruto, it's not supposed to be divorced. Most people say that they're completing the journey with Uhuru Ruto. Let's complete the journey.
And let me ask you, if at all he was to form another party, what do you think his chances would be in winning the next election?
I think you cannot deny the fact that the deputy president, as it is, enjoys massive support from quite a lot of places in the country. Some people might want to argue that it's only in the Rift Valley, but I can tell you that the deputy president enjoys massive support, even from where I come from in the Nyanza region, from Central, and from so many other places. Right now, there are implications of coming up with another party. Of course, we know that parties in Kenya mean nothing. Today, if Uhuru was to form another party, then he moves on with his team. If Raila was to form a party right now, he has his soldiers ready to move with. The same thing with Ruto. I think for me, the interest has been from the Ruto side that they don't want to form another party. They want to remain in Jubilee.
And Araba, looking at the alliances being formed right now, KANU and Jubilee Party, do you honestly believe, like what you're saying right now, do you honestly believe that the deputy president actually has a chance at winning the next general election? Considering that, well, does it mean that he still has a bit of presence in the country in terms of voter suasion?
And as we're speaking right now, the presidency in 2022 is for Ruto to lose. As we are speaking currently, if elections were to be held today, then we know that the front runner is Ruto. And considering that now new formations are coming, it's only time will tell on whether we are going to have somebody else who can be able to battle it out with the deputy president. But as we are speaking right now, it's only there is no formidable person who has come out to declare that he's running for the presidency and who has shown it outright that he or she is ready for that presidency. I'm speaking as we are right now, but as time goes by, only time will tell.
You know, Areba, for some, the speculation has been that there's no frosty relationship between Uhuru and Ruto. Perhaps there's an underlying plan, perhaps there's something we're not seeing. What do you make of this?
I think one thing we have learned in the political landscape is that you never have enemies or you never have permanent friends. We didn't know that Kalonzo is also thinking of joining the alliance. I don't know what this alliance is meant to achieve. But a day in Kenyan politics is a very long time. You cannot rule out anything. You cannot rule out the president supporting the deputy president. You cannot rule out Mudavadi backing the deputy president. There is no impossibility in politics there.
All right. Interesting thoughts there. Well, let's just look at page 2 of the People Daily, talking about Sonko to issue fresh budget as earlier bill declared illegal. Well, the Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko will present a supplementary appropriation bill to the County Assembly for consideration after the earlier one was dismissed as illegal. Areba?
I can hear you.
Yes. So this particular story, the question is, looking at what Sonko has been through recently and what's happening now, what do you make of this particular story in the dailies today?
I said on the show a couple of weeks ago that Nairobi does not need a legal solution. It needs a political solution. I can tell you for sure that even the supplementary, it has been declared illegal from the courts. But then on the political aspect, you saw MCAs, I think yesterday or a day before yesterday, being led by the minority leader, that is Peter Imwatwok, telling the Governor Sonko that he should keep off the Nairobi metropolitan issues, or else he's going to have it rough. And you see, this kind of push and pull is hurting the service delivery to the people. Whereas the law is there to cure some of these issues, you never have the law cure political problems. That is one thing I can tell you for sure. So we're still likely to see the push and pull in Nairobi County. Sonko has won, let me say, the first round in the budgetary issue, but now it comes to the political aspect. Is he able to also marshal the political goodwill that is needed to pass the supplementary budget? That is another question.
Well, the question is, I think, for many is, why a fresh one? What's the politics behind this, Areba?
The politics behind it is that Sonko contented the initial budget, which is his right as the governor of Nairobi. He sent back a memoranda to the assembly which had changes the way it was supposed to be. The changes were never done, and the speaker of the assembly was on record saying that then they would pass the budget as it was without the changes that Sonko had proposed. And the law as it is that the governor has a say, and if he doesn't sign the budget, then it does not become into law. I saw the Kisii County yesterday signed it supplementary. The other day I saw Bungoma signing it. So the governor still has a role in running the county. The only issue is that there has been a fragmentation of Nairobi County into the Nairobi Metropolitan and the Nairobi County. And it seems like the Nairobi Metropolitan enjoys more goodwill from the powers that might be in running of Nairobi County. And that is why I told you, whereas the law is clear in terms of the managing of counties, in Nairobi County we have a scenario where the governor is now playing second fiddle to the Nairobi Metropolitan. And that is why I said there has to be a differentiation between the law and politics. He has won on the law aspect, will you win on politics?
All right. Let's look at page 4 of the People Daily. I know, Araba, we were supposed to look at the Standard and the Daily Nation, just having a bit of a challenge with loading the papers, but I'm sure my director is working on that to just make sure it works. Page 4, we have the story here, the available options for Ruto after Senate setback. That's, I think we looked at that story. Page 5, Ferry Murkomen goes down for Ruto. Seems like Murkomen is willing to go down for Ruto no matter what he goes through, whether it means losing his position.
Murkomen was my lecturer, and I have to give it to him that at his age, he has achieved what most people will dream to achieve in most of their lives. I remember Murkomen taught me in college, and he had a humble beginning, I can say. And let us give it up to him. Around 7 or 8 years in politics, he has risen to the ranks of a majority leader, and he has a considerable following in his backyard in Elgeyo Marakwet and also in the North Rift. So this is somebody that we cannot write off at the moment. And the good thing is that he is able to know where he came from and who stood with him. I know for sure the deputy president then stood with Murkomen on his rising, and he has been a loyal foot soldier. Let's give it up to him.
Okay. And if we go further into this story, it talks about differences between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto escalating. Murkomen publicly sided with the DP, particularly by opposing the head of state's political deal with opposition leader Raila Odinga in 2018. I mean, with what is happening to DP, Ruto's allies, I mean, what do you foresee for the future for each and every one of them? Because it seems like the war is not nearing an end.
I think for the deputy president's team, they should know that they should fasten their seatbelts. It looks like the bumpy ride has just started. If you go by the sentiments which are given by some of the people who are considered to be close to the president, that is the likes of Murathe and the likes of Tuju. So let them fasten their seatbelts, and it looks like it's going to be a bumpy ride. But I'm sure that they also have quite a number of seasoned politicians in their camp, and they'll be ready to match with the kind of the bumpy ride that is going to come.
And here, if we just look at another story here, Areba, so much of politics seems like politics is back in the country, Areba. We were so quiet because of coronavirus, but things are back to normal.
Of course, as I told you, from the end of this week, we are going to have coronavirus news somewhere as a small cutting, or probably somewhere near sports news, because we are back to our default settings.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, page 6, this story, Pogisio defends his election vows to unite Jubilee coalition. If we can just look a little bit into the story, it talks about West Pokot Senator Samuel Pogisio yesterday defended his controversial election as the Senate leader of majority as he took up his new assignment with Gusto. Areba?
Sorry.
Considering that Murkomen does not plan to stand down from his position, what happens now?
Of course, for Murkomen right now, what I would say is that it looks like it's done. I mean, there's a very thin line. I'm an advocate, and there's a very thin line when it comes to litigation in terms of political parties management. I can tell you for sure in the 2017 elections, I spent endless times at the political parties' disciplinary tribunal, and I had several orders that were supposed to be enforced by a number of political parties. Unfortunately, most of them went against those orders from the political parties' disciplinary tribunal. So I think there's really a very thin survival line for Murkomen and Susan Kihika, but that does not mean that court orders should be disobeyed. I have always held that court orders must be obeyed, but then the system that we live in, the management of political parties is left largely to politics. There is a very thin survival line when it comes to politics. And I would, for now, for me, my opinion is that the Murkomen and Kihika team should just sit and forge the way forward. It looks like it has already been done, and the decisions have already been made.
Okay. Page 7 talks about state boosting border security to lock out imported cases. Further to this story, the government has beefed up security, Areba, at the border points to curb importation of coronavirus from neighboring countries as cases rose to 715 following a confirmation that 15 more people tested positive yesterday. This issue of imported cases has become very rife right now. Areba.
So when it comes to the neighbors, I have been on record before saying that the way the East African community works, there was need for the heads of states to sit together and be able to forge a common way forward. Unfortunately, that has not happened. Even yesterday, there was a virtual meeting of the heads of states, and actually some of them did not attend that meeting. So that looks like the East African community heads of state do not have a common approach when it comes to managing the coronavirus. And that is where we are likely to see drastic measures by some countries in terms of protecting their countries. And this is going to further hurt our relationship with our neighbor, the East African community. Remember that we do not have a very rosy relationship with some of our neighbors. So this is really going to affect further. But my thinking is that they need to sit down and really have a common approach in terms of combating the coronavirus as a team.
And I think good news for the airlines. However, I know that the airlines are facing a big task ahead because they cannot have enough passengers, the kind of passengers that they were having before. This story, moving away from what we were just discussing in page 8 of the People Daily area, but talking about international flights, school resumes soon. And Kenya is considering opening up her airspace to international flights after a ban imposed in March to stop the spread of COVID-19 pandemic. However, even as much as, I was reading about this yesterday, Areba, and as much as the flights are being opened up, there's still that issue of how sustainable will it be, considering that the number of passengers will not be the same.
I think this is one of the phenomena that we, the common joke is that this is our first time here having a pandemic that is ravaging throughout all the country. And what we have seen in the West and some Asian countries is that we have to gradually open up our economies. And I was happy to see the notice yesterday from, I think, the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority. I know it was from the JKA management team, calling up on all the stakeholders for a management team to deliberate on the best way to start opening up. And this is a welcome relief. At the end of the day, we have to open up our economies. And remember that even the Ministry of Education came up with a team to start working on modalities of reopening our schools. So slowly you can see that there are thoughts of reopening our economies and reopening up our spaces. If you look at the international travel and the air travel, it has received a lot of beating. And I'm hoping that locally the government is able to come out and bail out our airlines. Remember that in the US and other countries, a lot of money has been allocated to keep the airlines afloat. We just came in from a season where international air travel had received a lot of beating in terms of the numbers. And we hope that going forward, we can only come out better. And remember that airlines will be needed to make investments in terms of combating the further spread of the virus. I am an ardent follower of somebody called Sam Chui. He is a blogger on aviation matters. And yesterday I saw him trying to tell us how it's likely to be when it comes to reopening of the airlines. And airlines might have to restructure even their way of sitting to be able to keep their passengers safe. So I'm happy that JKI is calling up stakeholders for a preliminary meeting to be able to chart the way forward in terms of reopening. At the end of the day, we have to reopen our economies.
Indeed. Just finally, a story here. Good news for learning institutions, especially universities. The headline here reads, MKU, that's Mount Kenya University Board, cushions workforce with new contracts post-corona. Well, the story here, Reba, talking about Mount Kenya University Board of Directors has become the first institution in the country to cushion its employees from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. You would imagine, Reba, that most of them had already done this by now, but I guess MKU is setting the pace right now.
I think that is in the moment of adversities and in the moment of a crisis, that is when you get to determine leaders among leaders. I'm happy that the Mount Kenya University has already been at the forefront in terms of restructuring how it's managing its workforce. I know quite a number of private universities declared their employees redundant and had others sent on unpaid leave. But this is a welcome relief. And for anybody who's an employer out there, remember that the people who look up to you need to survive. Probably the best way is looking at how to restructure in terms of the workforce and be able also to have them survive going forward.
You know, it's of great concern right now, Areba, especially for university students, how education is faring on. I think we lay so much focus on how we can take care of the students and not so much on how to cushion even the teachers themselves.
Of course, I think even in high schools, so many people have just been looking at the students alone, forgetting that behind those students we have a huge number of people who ensure that their lives are comfortable in those institutions, who ensure that they are taught. So when we have this conversation about the students also, let's look at the people, the support staff also. Okay.
And just a final story here, if we can just have this. In page 9, this is our final story, Reba, on Still the People Daily, the CS picks team to guide learning. Well, the Education Cabinet Secretary seems to have appointed a 9-member team, Reba, to explore the best possible strategies of restoring normalcy in the sector. Indeed, normalcy is needed right now, Reba, considering the impact that COVID-19 has had on the education sector.
Yes, that is the story that I alluded to before, that different sectors of the economy are looking at setting modalities of reopening up. And the CS for Education, Makoha, then sent down a team of experts and stakeholders from the education sector to work out on ways to effectively reopen up the learning. So we'll be seated and waiting for their report, and probably when they think the reopening should take place.
All right. And further to this story, the committee has been mandated to advise the Cabinet Secretary on reopening of the basic education, pre-primary, primary, secondary schools, teacher training, colleges and adult education institutions. Well, thank you so much, Areba, for your time. I think we'll have to close it at that particular point. Indeed, it's always a pleasure to have you join us. What are you planning for the day? Are you going to work today, or you're just, to the office, or are you working from home today?
Of course, at some point I'll go to the office, just waiting for traffic to calm down. You know, Nairobi is back to normal. So,
but I was just looking at traffic right now, Areba. There's no traffic is very minimal, especially at 7 a.m.
No. I know from 7:30 to around 8:30 there's a lot of traffic. So I'll probably leave the house later once traffic goes down. I've never been a fan of traffic.
All right, then do have a good day, and thank you for making time.
Thank you so much.
All right, that was Areba Omoyo, who is a political commentator, just taking us through the dailies. And right now, the Morning Cafe will take a short break. When we return, we look at stories making headlines regionally, internationally, and locally. So don't go too far. And by the way, in case you're thinking of starting a business, you want to watch this show till the end. And we will be having, indeed, an economist in studio to tell us a little bit about what businesses are working right now. In case you close down yours, what can you consider right now? And how can you start it? And where do you start? So don't go too far. The Morning Cafe will be back shortly. Stay tuned. Hello there. Well, this is the Morning Cafe. Let's take a look at some of the stories making headlines. The country has registered 15 new COVID-19 cases in the last 24 hours, raising the number of people infected with COVID-19 to 715. 2 other new cases were recorded from Tanzania nationals at the Hispania border. 8 more people have recovered, raising the number to 259, while the number of deaths has increased to 36. And as Lydia Gashoma reports, the government is drawing measures to make sure police cells conform to COVID-19 containment measures.
We have tested 978 samples, out of which 15 have tested positive for coronavirus. Of these 15, 14 are Kenyans and 1 is a Rwandese national.
Instances of suspects cramming in police cells have been reported even during the current coronavirus pandemic. And now, the Health Chief Administrative Secretary, Dr. Rashid Aman, says that the government is putting up measures to curb the spread of coronavirus in cells.
We have provided Prisons Department, wherever they have health facilities, we have provided them with materials, PPEs, sampling material, and they have been equally trained in sampling some of these inmates. Together with the counties, of course, where these prisons are placed, we are collaborating both with the Prisons Department and with the county authorities to be able to monitor and test these prisoners and then take the necessary measures to ensure that there is no spread in those environments.
In the past 24 hours, Wajir County has recorded 2 new COVID-19 cases, which are highly attributed to its close proximity to Somalia, which has recorded more than 1,000 COVID-19 cases.
In Wajir, the cases are in Gulet Dere, in Wajir South, and Grif Tuhaga in Wajir West. In Nairobi, the one case is from Githurai 44, and in Machakos from Katiani.
Security has been heightened at the Uganda and Tanzania borders so as to reduce the spread of COVID-19.
The security forces are doing the best they can to mend these borders and to control movement there. But, of course, people still use some of these porous borders. So we are now focusing on trying to provide and upscale the level of security at these borders so that we can also block off some of these porous borders.
Globally, there are more than 4.2 million reported COVID-19 cases, 1.5 million people have recovered, and more than 280,000 others have died. Lydia Gashomo, TV47.
And Elgeyo Marakwet Senator Kipchumba Murkomen has sit out at the Senate Speaker, Kenneth Lusaka, accusing him of acting as a puppet for the president. Murkomen was reacting after the Speaker issued a communication on the changes in the leadership of the majority party in the House as presented by the new majority whip, Murang'a Senator Irunga Kang'ata.
Revolutions eat their own children.
Yes.
Government eats their own people. This government is going to punish you more than they will punish me.
Words of Siaya Senator James Orengo, directed to Jubilee senators 2 years ago. And now, immediate former majority leader in the Senate Kipchumba Murkomen and former majority whip Susan Kihika are experiencing exactly that. Their own party de-whipped them in a rather cantankerous manner. They tried to object the removal, but their fate was sealed.
To 1, remove the current leader of majority, Senator Kipchumba Murkomen, in accordance with Standing Order 19.5. B, remove the current majority whip, Senator Susan Kihika, in accordance with Senate Standing Order 19.5. C, elect Senator Samuel Bogisho as Senate Majority Leader. D, elect Senator Irungu Kang'ata as Senate Majority Whip.
Murkomen is now turning the heat at the Senate Speaker Kenneth Lusaka, accusing him of being used by the president to make an alleged injustice on bona fide party members.
What was only being defended on this side was the fact that we must follow the rules. Be it as it may, Mr. Speaker, if finally you will disregard the law and make a decision that I'm not going to be the majority leader in this House, what I can only say is that I want to thank my colleagues who voted for me. Mr. Speaker, the president is already a big man. I am just but a son of a squatter, born and brought up in Embobut. To be a subject of his discussion over and over again, I want to say, Mr. President, now therefore deliver for the people of Kenya. Murkomen is out of the way. If I was your stumbling block, deliver for the people of Kenya.
Kericho Senator also faulted the Speaker acceptance of the removal of Murkomen and Kihika from the leadership of the Jubilee in the Senate, stating the move was done in a bad faith.
Because it was non-procedural. How you choose to treat this information, Mr. Speaker, is out there for history to remember that at such a time as this, when the country was faced with such a serious pandemic as we are dealing with, people sat somewhere, made forgeries, and we are about to sanction it as a House. We will go down so badly, Mr. Speaker.
But opposition senators led by minority leaders chided the duo for disrespecting the Speaker's office.
I heard Senator Murkomen state unequivocally that the president should stop lying to the nation and he should now deliver the things he itemized. Mr. Speaker, is it in order for him to run away from his statement?
Elsewhere, the Political Parties Dispute Resolution Tribunal has suspended the post-election coalition between KANU and Jubilee until the National Executive Council of the latter approves the merger. Elizabeth Mutuku, TV47 Nairobi.
As Jubilee senators attack at each other in the plenary of the House, their fervor is almost palpable to their bosses in Karen and State House. Jubilee party is almost dead, but also so much alive. The pundits say its leader are in a cold war that has far-reaching implications that will leave only one man standing. But who? And Rinkilemi tells us.
The only agenda for our party, Jubilee, has been wrangled from 2018 up to now, not focusing on delivery of services. If the greatest achievement of the President of Kenya is to demonstrate to the people of this country that I have removed my majority leader, I'm a big man. Mr. Speaker, the President is already a big man.
Division within the Jubilee Party is now more visible than ever. Monday's ouster of Senate Majority Leader Kipchumba Murkomen and the Chief Whip Susan Kihika being the latest crack in an already weak coalition. But according to communications consultant Barack Muluka, the reality of events in the political field will eventually change.
What one can say safely now is that Ruto and President Uhuru Kenyatta have fallen out, and they appear to be on the last stretch of their falling out. Whether the troops around Uhuru Kenyatta will stick with him, or whether they will migrate to find a formation around another leader, whether that leader will be Ruto or whosoever else, we cannot tell. It is far too soon, and politics are very much predicated against the exigencies of the time. So we don't know what the realities going ahead are going to be. We can only say safely that those two are no longer together.
According to Muluka, who spoke to TV47 on phone, top leaders in the Jubilee Party have weakened the party, and this might lead to lack of total trust within the system of the party's politics.
What we are seeing is the falling apart, the crumbling and falling apart of the Jubilee Party. Possibly, Deputy President William Ruto will find another formation. I don't know whether he will want to call it Jubilee or Jubilee something. President Kenyatta will go in another direction with his own strand. I don't know whether he's going to call it Jubilee. But the most critical thing that we can say about this without any fear of doubt or contradiction is that in future it is going to be very difficult for people in politics to trust each other. Certainly, President Uhuru Kenyatta is going to suffer a very serious trust deficit.
Pandits also opine that President Kenyatta is likely to suffer a very big drawback in the process of pursuing political legacy, hence there may be creation of another political party ahead of 2022 general elections. Nonetheless, the quagmire in Jubilee is the perfect definition of dirty politics. Leaders acting for the whims of their political patrons, no matter the dictates of their political party's charter. The row smacks of betrayal and backstabbing on the part of Deputy President and his ilk, and the same can be said for President Uhuru Kenyatta. It's now not a matter of who is betraying who, but who will outsmart who in this game of wits. Linda Alela, TV47.
Elgeyo Marakwet Senator Kipchumba Murkomen asked from the Senate majority leadership was a matter of when and not if. Murkomen and a host of others like Susan Kihika have been synonymous with moving against the grain of Jubilee, from opposing national government takeover of key functions from Nairobi County to BBI rallies in various regions early this year. Here's Josh Unsare with the making of this story.
Onesmus Kipchumba Murkomen's political journey started way back in 2013, the time he vied for Elgeyo Marakwet's senatorial seat under the URP ticket, a party then led by the Deputy President William Ruto. Under the Jubilee umbrella, Murkomen was appointed Senate Majority Leader in 2017 to represent the ruling coalition party Jubilee, which he did in the early years in the position. Things started to fall apart after the handshake between former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and President Kenyatta on 9th March 2018.
Adui ya umoja wa Kenya ni wale ambao wanatembea nchi hii, wanatembea na mkono mmoja wakipeana salamu na wamebeba kisu kwa mgongo. Unajua mtu akikusalimia namna hii lazima mwambie kwanza, "Bwana, kabla hujanisalimia weka mkono yote mbele." Sasa kuna ule jamaa alikuja akasalimia rais, akasema basi tusalimiane. Lakini anabeba kisu ya mkongo kwa mgongo ati anataka kupiga nayo naibu wa rais. Hiyo ni mtu mzuri kweli? Rais ati kwa sababu sasa ya handshake Jubilee House. Hata leo gazeti pages karibu 4 inasema kwa sababu ya handshake Jubilee imetetemeka, imewachana, rais na naibu wake hawako pamoja. How?
Tuangalie kazi ambayo tunafanya. Tuache hii mastori tunazungushwa hapa. Hata Murkomen sikujua uko na masaa ya kusoma magazeti buri huko. Tufanye harambe, tufanye mambo yale mengine, tujenge Kenya. Au namna gani?
Murkomen, who is a close ally of the Deputy President William Ruto in many instances, has been seen to be vocal in condemning the way BBI rallies were planned in various counties before the coronavirus pandemic hit the nation and the rallies were stopped.
Kwa hivyo, Mheshimiwa Rais Uhuru angeweza kufanya mimi kuwa majority leader kama nyinyi amngechukua yeye kuwa rais. Na wale wanasema tuheshimu rais na heshimu pia naibu wa rais, heshimu chama chake na uheshimu moja.
Recently, Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko's 357 million graft case saw Senator Kipchumba Murkomen and Makueni Senator Mutula Kilonzo represent the governor in the anti-corruption court, something that didn't augur well with the president.
Each of us, you and me, must make daily decisions purely driven by Kenya's wider and enduring interests. This, I believe, is not an unreasonable ask or an impossible position.
And then came the stroke that broke the camel's back. Last week, Kipchumba Murkomen, as Senate Majority Leader and on the floor of the House, opposed the national government takeover of key functions from the county government of Nairobi.
It is therefore completely baffling and unfathomable that despite the express requirements of the Constitution, the purported transfer of functions from Nairobi City County Government to the national government was conducted in an entirely opaque manner, with no reference whatsoever to the public gallery generally, and in particular to the people of the Nairobi City County. This is a complete clawback on the principle of public participation that is so dearly held by Kenyans at large.
Further, Senator Murkomen is a close ally of the Deputy President William Ruto, and his role in the 2022 political game plan might have led to the woes he is facing right now. Joash Onsare, TV47 Nairobi.
Truck drivers moving goods across East Africa have borne the full brunt of the COVID-19 pandemic, with the bulk of the latest confirmed cases being from and transmitted by truckers. In a virtual East African Community Heads of State and Government meeting held Tuesday, the countries acknowledged the need to work together to curb the spread of the virus that has been ravaging the world. Tanzania skipped the meeting for a second time in a row.
The situation at the borders of East Africa community states is dire. The balance between uninterrupted cross-border movement of goods and curbing importation of COVID-19 is delicate. Of the 15 COVID-19 cases confirmed in Kenya Tuesday, one person was a Rwandese national, an example of cross-border coronavirus transmission within East Africa. These are the circumstances that led the heads of state of the East African community to convene a virtual meeting Tuesday morning with COVID-19 top on the agenda.
The measures by the East African community will benefit our entire region.
During the meeting attended by Rwanda President Paul Kagame, South Sudan's Salva Kiir and Uganda's Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, President Uhuru Kenyatta emphasized on the need for collective EAC interventions against the global COVID-19 pandemic.
At the end of the day, unless we work together, we are not going to be able to solve this problem, because our borders are porous, our people are one, and therefore we must have a common position if we are to actually defeat this virus.
The heads of state tasked their respective state agencies responsible for health, transport and EAC affairs to roll out border screening and testing measures, especially for truck drivers, that do not compromise cross-border movement of goods. President Kenyatta highlighted the importance of contact tracing, a method that has successfully been used to track COVID-19 patients.
We are continuing to actively enforce what we call contact tracing, which has actually proved to be very effective, especially in tracing, as President Museveni has said, those who have come into contact and those people they come into contact with. And this has actually helped strengthen our capacity to detect and thereby treat our people.
Conspicuously missing was Tanzanian President John Pombe Magufuli and his Burundi counterpart Pierre Nkurunziza. This is the second time the two are missing the meeting chaired by Rwanda's Paul Kagame. Tracy Mokami, TV47.
They work tireless in the community almost unnoticed. In some communities, community healthcare workers are the only health caregivers available for hundreds of people. But even with the humongous work they have to do, many go for months without pay. And now many do not have the personal protective gear to guard against the highly contagious coronavirus. Here is Daniel Ndebede with a story of unsung healthcare heroes.
Healthcare providers, community and patients in the country all benefit when community healthcare workers build bridges that lead to better healthcare, better lives and reduce the cost of healthcare in the country. It is at this point these community health workers, or rather CHWs in Kisumu County, popularly known as Nyamrerwa, have volunteered to spearhead better healthcare, create awareness in rural communities and vulnerable people on communicable diseases. We meet Morina Cheng in the morning hours at her home in Nyalenda B slums. At 35 years of age, she is an energetic woman and she is ready to go meet her many clients. She tells us that she normally communicates with her clients via phone, but to those who lack mobile phones, she is always forced to move physically to their households.
Saa tatu kuna clients wangu wengine naweza kuwapigia simu wenye wako nayo. Tuna communicate through simu. Kama kuna umuhimu zaidi ninafika mahali wako, na kuna wengine wana simu, lazima nitembee kwa mguu mpaka mahali wako.
Maureen covers a total of 180 households, translating to a population of more than 1,200 people per month.
Mimi nina cover household 180, total population ni 1,246.
Edward Mito Milambo is another CHW who has been in the field for the last 27 years. His passion towards his work has made him keep on moving and serving his community, making him trusted worker by his patients and health officers.
Hii kazi ilianza kitambo kidogo, mimi nilikuwa mskauti. Hii kitu imestick ni kama ni a call kwa maishani yangu.
Both Maureen and Edward confirm that in their line of duty, things have not been easy. They are forced to dig deeper in their pockets to get facilitation to move around. Further, they say that they lack personal protective gears when interacting with clients, especially during this coronavirus pandemic period.
Kuenda kwa mgonjwa, sina pesa, sina hela, nitatembea.
Sisi kama CHV wa Kisumu County hatujakuwa kwa payroll for so long. Hadi hivi majuzi last year vile UHC ilikuja, UHC ilianza kutulipa shilingi 3,000 na wanakata 500 inaenda kwa NHIF. Na sofa hiyo pesa hatujapewa kwa miezi 8 hadi wa leo.
Na hii mambo ya COVID-19, mtu lazima kwae kwa nyumba. Sasa hii tunapata very big challenge, tunakaa kwa nyumba.
Despite being volunteers in the community, still some leaders keep them at bay.
With the community there's no problem. Shida iko tu kwa county government na government, national government.
Serikali so far naweza kusema imetutupa kiasi.
On the other hand, clients of community health workers have applauded their efforts.
Watuongezewe nyamrarwa zingine ili watusaidie.
Na muhimu sababu anatusaidia. Hata ukitaka dawa unaweza muende umuulize hivi na hivi kusaidia.
Community health work alikuwa ananitembelea, ananisaidia, ananipea mafunzo, ananiambia mtoto nanyonyesha paka 6 weeks ndo nampatia chochote, maziwa kaa uji hivyo. Naona kama amenisaidia sana.
Kisumu Governor Professor Peter Nyang' Nyong'o has said that currently the county has 2,558 CHWs and the optimum number is expected to be at least 5,000.
But at the moment we have 2,558 community health workers in Kisumu County. Optimally, we really need about 5,500.
The governor says that the county has come up with a plan to ensure every CHW receive his or her own salary. Professor Nyong'o regrets that there have been instances where mismanagement of funds belonging to the CHWs has led to delay their pay.
We cannot have more CHWs than Kakamega. Kakamega have 12 constituencies, we only have 7. So there's no way that we can have more CHWs than Kakamega. There must be something wrong somewhere. So we agreed here that I want to pay them quarterly. The money is now there in the budget. We are going to pay in arrears those months that have not been paid. And we agreed we are going to pay them in arrears, which is going to be a bonanza for them.
Daniel Dembede, TV47, Kisumu County.
Well, that story brings us to a short break. Remember, we have a lot lined up for you today, including a look at an in-depth look, at stories making headlines across the globe, and of course also talking to an economist about starting a business. And indeed, I know many of you have been affected because some have lost jobs, some have closed business. But what is really the idea right now? What can you pursue in terms of business? And we'll be talking to an economist later on in this program just to tell us exactly what we can do in this time, how to start a business and what we need in starting that business. However, let's take a short break. Don't go too far. Morning Cafe will be back shortly. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is the Morning Cafe, and right now we want to look at some of the stories making headlines across the globe and in the country and regionally, of course. And to just look at this story is in depth, we have in studio with me Joy Mdivo. She is an advocate of the High Court. Well, Joy, you're looking fresh today.
Thank you. How are you, Leah?
Okay, ni kama tumekuamsha mapema sana.
We have slept. We are so happy.
Okay, well, it's good to see you. A lot is happening in the world of politics. We're seeing the Jubilee KANU coalition deal. Of course, we know Senate Majority Leader Kipchumba Murkomen and Majority Whip Susan Kihika's removal from Jubilee Party Senate leadership. This is set to be a battle. And we are yet to see what exactly will happen, of course, as the days go by. But what do you make of this battle right now? Who stands to win and lose?
That's a very loaded question. Who stands to win and who stands to lose? I think everybody has something they're winning and something that they're losing. So it depends on who wants to win what and who is losing what. So let me start with the people who are ousted. Of course, naturally, they've lost their positions. That comes with a loss of income, a loss of prestige. You're no longer in a GK vehicle. Your status goes back to a regular senator. So that is a little bit of a blowback. But if you look at what they're gaining politically, then you understand that there's some mileage that they're getting. You know, there's that, you look like a conquering hero to your supporters anyway. You look like a conquering hero. So that is on the part of the senators. So I guess when they go back home, it will make for excellent politics. If they're looking for re-election, probably they have more or less secured their ticket because of, taking a blow nationally usually translates into votes locally on the ground. So then that's what they're winning and that's what they're losing. If you look at what has happened now in terms of democracy, this has also shown Kenyans, you know what, there are options. Because that's one of the things I think the president was going for. He wanted people to understand, especially within Jubilee, that you cannot always be holding him hostage. He is capable of fanning out and garnering support from across the board if he needs it. And so that's one of the things that I think you can say the president has managed to gain, is that he's no longer regained control of the people at the helm of party leadership in the Senate, but he has also demonstrated the strength of character to be able to go through with it, because it's not something easy to do. But on the other hand, KANU is a big winner in this, because, they're just a three-senator party there with no representation in any House committee and no chance of any representation. And now look, they have had a majority, they have the majority leader position. It's such a coup on their part, it's such a boost to their system that KANU has gotten such a big resurgence in this. And by extension, Gideon Moi, because he's the leader of KANU. So who are the winners, who are the losers? Everybody's winning something. But one thing that the president has lost in this, Jubilee as a whole already had a majority. But now with the Tanga faction sort of stepping away from the Jubilee voting bloc, the president has to be working extra hard with all the other parties in the House to push his motions through. So on that score, he has lost that edge of an outright majority. Now he has to work harder to work with everybody else, including ODM and KANU and everybody else, to push his motions through.
Well, Joy, you've mentioned something there, that the president has to work a little bit harder than usual. But do you think this will be the case? He already has now a deal. Well, he's trying to woo KANU. He may have actually managed to woo KANU into going into a deal with him. That means for some, as I've talked to some analysts, they feel that his presence in the country in terms of influence of the electorate is getting stronger, especially with this unity, that the forces that he's getting into. So when we look at the KANU Jubilee deal, post-election deal, do you think then the president is perhaps thinking, you know what, I don't really need the deputy president if I have the KANU deal, if I have ODM on board as well?
What you're saying is true, because first, let's not even go to KANU. Let's even start with ODM. By bringing ODM into the fold, the president actually strengthened his position, because this was a voting bloc that originally had been ordinarily hostile to what the president is doing. So he had garnered that. But that time, the Jubilee bloc was still intact. So he basically had, he could count on the entire Jubilee bloc, and he could count on the ODM support. Now, in getting Kanu in, he's gotten that extra 3 people to come onto his board. Now I'm looking at the Senate plainly. Now, what I'm talking about is the loss in how many has gotten in versus how many may have hemorrhaged out. And that's where the balance will be a bit tricky. But I do agree with you that in working with everybody else, I'm sure if a matter comes to a vote and it has got implications to counties and Kenyans are eager to go with it, even the ones who are not, quote unquote, allied to the president will be foolhardy to vote against the president simply because they're voting against the president. They too have to ride on the Jubilee legacy to seek re-election. So they may not be so quick to sabotage what the president wants to do. But now, this is a voting bloc that now you have to woo, and these are people who are supposed to be a given. So that's where the president sort of has to juggle his balls now a little bit more skillfully, because these are guys who would have ordinarily been for you, but now you've sort of muddied the waters a little bit. So you have to come back with strategy and tact to secure the support, whereas before it would have been a given. So that's what I meant.
Well, Joy, in trying to understand, for someone who's trying to understand what's going on in the world of politics, the KANU Jubilee post-election deal, what makes it null and void? Lawfully, when you look at it legally, why is it null and void? Help us understand this.
The matter is before the political parties tribunal, so I will not go into declaring it null and void or declaring it valid. That is a matter that is up for determination. But when you're coming into a post-election pact, it's not forbidden, because as per our Political Parties Act, it is envisaged to have pre-election coalitions and post-election coalitions. Let me just step away from Kenya a little bit. If you look at other jurisdictions, like Israel, for example, they have, every time they don't have confidence in their prime minister, they usually just call an election. They have elections fairly frequently. And most of the time, the prime minister usually does not garner enough support to have a majority in parliament. Now, if you're going to lead in a house, you want to start with at least, you have a majority, even if it's a slim majority. So many of them have to enter into post-elective pacts to help them deliver what they have promised during the campaign period. Now, coming back to Kenya, that is where I think that the president was premised. He was like, there's something I want to deliver. With the current crew that I have, I may not be able to deliver it. So let me have this negotiation. Now, unbeknownst to most of us, the negotiations with KANU had been happening behind the scenes for quite a bit. It's just now that we're getting to know about it. What the Tanga side is arguing about, was it taken to neck or whatnot, that's a matter that I will leave to the political parties' dispute tribunal. However, the legality of coming into post-election pacts, that's a given, and it's something that we should expect with our political life. With the demise of the big man parties, eventually parties will evolve into being ideology-driven, and that will become more commonplace than we have been seeing in recent past. But in Kenya, with the Nusumkate government, that was also a post-election pact. So it is envisaged in our law, and it is a possibility, it's a distinct possibility.
And well, Joy, the fact that the Deputy President, the allies seem to have won, round one, so to speak, yesterday with making sure that they achieve the suspension of the implementation of the KANU Jubilee post-election deal. Do you think this is time for them to celebrate? Or they should expect a more bumpy ride ahead?
No, it's going to be bumpy. You had, I don't know, another media house had an interview with the vice chairman, who we realize now is still vice chairman, David Morathe. And he said, but this is just the beginning. Expect the boat to be rocked even more. I think the president is going the full hog in trying to reclaim control of Jubilee Party. Mm-hmm. So if they think that this is over, there's going to be more turbulence ahead. However, I would be very hesitant to write them off, because even where they are sitting, they are strategists and they're seasoned politicians also on the other side. So I think for Kenyans, we better get out our popcorn and just calm down, because it's going to be a few days of political bashing here and there. The timing is completely lousy in terms of where the country is right now. But being politicians, their clock is also running, just like the rest of ours is running. So they cannot, I think, imagine they cannot sit and wait out COVID. They have to do something, and they've decided to do it now. So we are in for a bumpy ride, all of us, I guess.
And I just want to hear from you. Well, a section of Nakuru leaders have dared, the Senate Majority Leader and the Majority Whip to quit Jubilee. Do you think this would be a prudent decision to make at this point?
Oh, you're talking about the former leaders or the current leaders? The former ones?
Well, we will call them former because the president has already appointed his preferred persons for those particular posts that they were holding. But talking about a section of Nakuru leaders daring Murkomen and Kihika to quit Jubilee, do you think this would help them in any way?
Happen. That's not going to happen. Why would they quit Jubilee? Why would they subject themselves to another election now? Because, if you quit a party, now you have to relinquish your seat and then seek a fresh mandate. Now this is 2020, you're going for elections in 2 years. Why would you do that to yourself? So unless they're literally kicked out of the party, which is next to impossible, I don't see them becoming unelected. I think right now, in terms of falling, they're falling to the base level. You've gone back to a normal elected senator. I don't see them being pushed further down than that. And I don't see them heeding to any calls to resign. We've had this with the deputy president all the time, being called to resign. Has he ever heeded to it? Well, and I listened to Senator Murkomen last night on another media house, and he was asked the same question, and he said categorically that there's nowhere they're going. So I don't foresee that happening at all.
One question. When the deputy president and his counterpart, the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, took over the country in terms of winning the last election, they were buddies. They were very close.
Yes.
I think we would be interested to know, in your view, what has been the progressive issue between the two? At what point did they begin having a frosty relationship? Because it seems like something that just came up in the media. We got to hear about it, but was it something that was growing? Help us understand.
I'm not very sure myself. When I listen to the voices that have been talking about this a lot, if you listen to if you listen to Tuju, or you listen to Murave, or you listen to some of the Kieleweke allied legislators, one of the things that come out is there's insubordination. He insults the president. He makes forays into the president's backyard, and he, upsets. So it looks like there was a sort of a feeling that the deputy president was outshining his boss. Mm-hmm. And that came at the expense of delivering on the government mandate. So it became politicking too early. So this is the narrative that has been going on. Whether or not that is fact or fiction, I leave that to the viewers to just make up their own mind, because the Kenyans, they live in this space. And so based on that accusation, then the clamor became to try and sort of trim the deputy president's influence down. And we've seen a lot of activity towards that direction, up to and including the appointment of the super CS and other such maneuvers. However, what is happening now seems to be like all-out war, and that is very novel. We hadn't seen this before. We had the mamas, we knew that there was a fallout, but this seems to be, it's a public tearing. And it's a little bit messy. Why we didn't just use a samurai sword and swoop it at once and finish it? I don't know. But we decided to kill it with a butcher knife. So it's bloody, it's messy. But I think the big idea is passing the message of you cannot outshine your boss. You cannot come out looking stronger than your boss. Whether that is true or not true, again, I leave that to your pundits. But if I look at where did this start going wrong, it's that even that the name Tanga Tanga, except the two decided, you know what, the deputy is Tanga Tangaing everywhere. So it's sort of been a slow builder. Now that's just coming to a head. But be that as it may, somebody said with the 48 laws of power, if you outshine your boss, then your boss feels threatened in his position and he might retaliate. And I guess that's what we're seeing now.
Mm-hmm. And let's just look at some other story here, away from matters politics. We could talk about politics the whole day, Joy, and we'd have a lot more to talk about anyway. But let's just look at the airlines bracing for fewer booked seats We do know that, of course, the Kenya Airways is very concerned about the post-COVID situation and, of course, the current COVID-19 requirements, which means some of the requirements there, they will probably have fewer booked seats. Already they're having issues, financial issues. What do you foresee for this airline?
The airline has to, how do I put it? Retreat, re-strategize, relaunch. That's what KQ needs to do. Because forget COVID. Even before COVID, they were in trouble. That's why they're trying to force through the merger with the JKIA, and they would have just ended up bleeding the JKIA dry, because the JKIA, as it is a going concern. But the KQ has been struggling for a while. If I was KQ management right now, rather than seeking a bailout that will probably just be sinking into a black hole, I'll take time to retreat, re-strategize, relaunch. We've seen that with Uganda Airlines. They pulled out of the market for a while, took time to restructure, put things in place, shed off excess staff, excess baggage, deal with their debt, and then you relaunch and start again. We've seen that also with, I think it's South African Airlines. So it's possible to do that. There's nothing that says that unless a KQ flight is in the air, then there's trouble. However, as a Kenyan, I really want KQ to keep flying. Problem has been how we somehow seem to always run aground. Right now, if you ask me, and if you're looking at a major bailout, I'm not sure about the figures, but I had a figure of 7 billion being bandied around as being the bailout being sought by KQ. Right now, so many little businesses are going down. 7 billion shillings, give it to the SMEs. I mean, just give most of these SMEs, if you give them an injection of 100,000 shillings, the business is up and running again. Those are Kenyan families being fed. Those are Kenyan children being educated. Those are Kenyans clawing their way out of poverty. So in terms of cost benefits analysis, right now I think the government stimulus should be going more to keeping the Kenyans buoyant. And for KQ to have, this is a good time to rethink, relaunch, re-strategize before they come back. Because even if they get a bailout injection right now and get back in the market, you've correctly pointed out, the market is already suppressed. Many borders are still closed. So you're going to be having planes flying with 8 people inside. So this is not even the time to start putting KQ back in the air internationally anyway. So maybe they can keep a few domestic flights, maybe a few African flights, and just figure things out. Because we don't want to be taking good money and throwing it after a bad venture. We'd rather take our time. We've been given the excuse to start again. Let's start on the right footing.
Well, Joy, you know, so many stories talking about, you know, across the media industry, locally, globally, everyone is talking about the looming recession at the Kenya Airways. One will be interested to know what exactly will happen in this case, because when you look at tourism, it's said to be the biggest cash cow for the country, and it's also mainly where the Kenya Airways gets most of its business. So what does this mean even for the economy of Kenya?
But there's business that's still brisk. For example, the cargo business is still fairly brisk because we export a few things, and there's plenty that comes into the country. So the cargo business is still fairly brisk. But across the globe right now, it's not just with Kenya Airways. Across the globe, there will be a serious dip in the airline industry. Tourism, like you correctly pointed out, will take time to pick up. Some pundits put it at least 24 months before we are seeing pre-COVID bookings. Because people will be taking the time to not just recover in terms of the disease, financially, many people have taken a hit. So they cannot afford to take up the holiday that they're planning to take out for their next anniversary. They need that money that they had saved now to restart life. So all around the world, there's a recalibration. That's why I'm saying this is a good time for KQ to sort of re-strategize and see what areas are profitable, where do we keep going, where do we draw back, where is there too much competition, so we don't need to push there. Because if we look at it more critically, even before COVID, KQ had issues. This is the time to sort out those issues. Do we need to shed more staff? Do we need to do away with some of the leases? Were they too skewed in favor? What about the hedging of the fuel? This is the time to look at all those things afresh. Renegotiate those deals, because you have a window now of saying, you know what, I don't need this much fuel, I had booked, I had hedged this much. Right now, fuel is at an all-time low. Can we renegotiate? This is the time to do that, rather than pushing forward. And it's a good time because everybody will be doing it. So it's not like your competition is running way ahead of you. There are stronger airlines that will take off almost immediately. But there's no shame in being tactical about living to fight another day, rather than, limping along and then falling up ahead because you weren't able to take off properly.
Okay. And to a very interesting story here. When I read this story, Joy, and every time I think about this story, I feel like laughing. I know you know which story it is.
Yes.
But so the toilet duty for Jakarta's social distancing violators. I mean, this issue, you'd think it's only a Kenyan issue. It's in Tanzania, it's in Uganda, it's also in Indonesia. People are just not observing the containment measures. However, in this story, Joy, if I can just tell the audience, Indonesians who violate social distancing rules in the capital could soon find themselves, Joy, forced to clean toilets to atone for their sins.
Yes.
They'll be cleaning toilets.
Yes. And that's on my social media pages, I've been talking about it a lot. At the beginning, we needed to rule by fiat and tell, stay indoors, don't get out. The police are out on the streets. But now we're getting into day 63 of this. That's pretty old right now. Everybody's like, you know what, yes, okay, we are over and done with. This is time for government to hand the responsibility back to the citizen for their own health. Initially, that was important because we did not want our medical field to be overrun. That's why I kept talking about flattening the curve. But we cannot eliminate the disease. The disease is here to stay for a while because viruses are wont to, jump from person to person until eventually the last person gets it. And I think across the globe, we've only eradicated one, smallpox. All the others are still here somewhere, in small measure, but they're still here somewhere. So that said, we have to come to a place where the citizen takes responsibility for their actions. Even in Kenya right now, curfew violators are being tried in Kasarani and they're being given community service. So they're being told, go out and fieka some grass.
So what do you think we could tailor-make for Kenyans here? The ones who are violating the containment measures?
We have community service. People are being made to fieka and to go through drainage and pick stuff out.
You think that's effective?
It has to become social responsibility now. Because not really a crime to not social distance. You're actually putting yourself in danger. And eventually we'll come to a place where if you don't do it, it is your health. And that's where we should be heading because you can't throw the police at this point. It's not a legal problem. It's not an administration problem. This is a matter of personal responsibility. So you just it's like what you did with HIV. You tell people, abstain, be faithful, use condoms. What they choose to do with those three, if they choose D, none of the above, again, they bear the consequences of their inaction. So that's where public health needs to get to. But for now, I agree. Because if you say they're curfew violators or social distancing violators, that's not a crime. There's no crime called you did not social distance. So it's one of those things where the responsibility must come back to the public. And I like that approach in Indonesia. Because public shaming is one of the ways of the society forcing everybody to behave right. That's why we don't walk naked. Because people will look at you and tell you, hey, what's wrong with you? They'll force you back into the house to get clothes or clothe you themselves. So this is a way of sort of getting people to get that awareness of, you know what, we all need to stay away from each other. We all need to wear a mask. We all need to give distance. So I support it. It's better than throwing people in jail where they go and contaminate each other some more. It's a bigger public health issue, if you ask me.
And well, Joy, further into this story, it said that going outside in Jakarta, going outside without a mask can result to a fine of 250,000 rupiah. That's 1,700 Kenya shillings. And of course, also farms that ignore shutdown orders or violate public health rules can be hit with a fine of up to 50 million rupiah. It seems like Indonesia is not playing games. They have to social distance.
It's true. And when you listen to the experts on this issue, one of the most effective ways of not getting this virus is, of course, keeping your hands clean so that even if you touch your face, you do not give yourself the virus. But even if you're with somebody who's infected, but you keep 2 meters apart, even if when they're talking, they are spewing droplets, or if they sneeze and they're spewing droplets, By the time it's going across 2 meters, gravity has done its work and it starts falling. And so it doesn't get to you. So social distancing is very effective in keeping one safe from the virus. And that's what I'm saying, when you give people those the fines and the other things, right now it looks like it's punitive, but if it becomes second nature, you get to a place where you realize fewer and fewer people will be getting sick. And at the end of the day, the virus will burn itself out because it has no more vectors, no more people to go to. But if we do not, especially in our African and Asian cultures, where we have a lot of, we don't have personal space. I mean, you've been in a supermarket on Christmas Eve, there's no personal spacing. Everybody's in each other's space. This has come to teach us, by the way, you know what? It is important to give people their space because you don't know what they're carrying and you don't know what you're carrying and you don't want to be sharing what you're each sharing. So even in schools, for example, our children have to start learning that consciousness. Maybe that thing of when one kid gets a cold in school, all the children get colds. Maybe this is the time when it's going to stop. The new norm of social distancing.
Indeed, Joy. Joy, well, we just have to come to a close of this amazing discussion today. Always a pleasure to have you join us on the Morning Cafe.
It was lovely to be here, Leah.
And your great company.
Asante sana.
Have a lovely day, Joy.
Same to you. God bless.
God bless you too. Well, this has been the discussion on current affairs, just a look at stories making headlines right now. I want us to take a short break, and when we return, we'll be looking at starting a business, especially now that we know many businesses have closed, some have lost jobs. What can you venture into at this moment, and where do you start? We'll be talking to an economist about that, so don't go too far. The Morning Cafe will be back shortly with that conversation.
Today for tomorrow's betterment. But if we don't know what that betterment is, the want factor of what we're
Stay at home.
You are the chosen one.
Because I am your mother.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Same-sex attraction isn't completely gone because
my root is from God.
Oh, Pete.
You'll see some kind of like a smokish thing.
Hey man, don't forget about the monkeys. Mama Saida, see you.
Where are we? Right here on TV 47, the home of untold stories.
Sarma Enterprises Limited. We are your trusted and reliable supplier of quality timber products, construction material suppliers, which are river sand, ballast, building stones. Visit our website on www.sarma.co.ke. Sarma Enterprises Limited. Quality materials for quality structures.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is the Morning Cafe. Right now we're looking at, we are in the lifestyle segment bit, and today we're looking at businesses. We do know that many people out there, not just in Kenya but globally, have lost their jobs. Others have closed down businesses. Others are grappling with the issue of reduced revenue. And of course, for some, they're just trying to figure out, what next? What do I do? And we have a gentleman here, Ken Gishinga, he's an economist, and of course, just a little bit more about him. He is the chief economist at Mentoria Economics. I know, Ken, many people have been affected, but first, before we go to the discussion, I don't know, how are you doing? How are you coping with the whole COVID-19 impact?
Well, thank you, and good morning, Leah.
Good morning.
Definitely, this is an interesting time in the history of our country. Plenty of disruption in the economy, plenty of disruption in business. So even as an economist, I've been studying the Kenyan economy for the last 10 years. And I can tell you this, we've never seen anything like this. So I think it's a time for new beginnings. It's a time for soul searching. And I think we'll see the silver lining we might see a lot of innovation coming out as people start thinking out of the box.
Well, Ken, if you can just take us through briefly on the impact of COVID-19 on the not just really the economy, but let's talk about businesses. What has been what have you witnessed thus far?
Well, obviously, what we call demand for goods and services has gone to an all-time low. If you look at, part of the measures of social distancing has meant people prefer to stay home. So obviously, segments such as hospitality have taken such a big hit. People are not meeting as much as they should. People are actually just focusing on spending their money on food and rent. So all the other segments of the economy that depend on demand from people have taken a huge beating. Now, obviously, this is a temporary situation, and we expect things to change. But there's some feeling that even once we reopen the economy, things might be fundamentally different, and we might not quite go back to the situation we once knew pre-COVID.
What, in your view, what will be the new normal post-COVID?
Well, I think digital. Interviews such as these that used to be face-to-face in the studio, now everything has moved towards a digital platform. So I think businesses that took advantage of digital infrastructure are going to do much better. Companies where people are able to work from home and leverage on digital infrastructure are going to do very well. But you'll find industries that had not invested much in ICT, people who had not thought about the future of work, will really have a hard time trying to adjust to the new normal. But I can tell you the new normal will be very, very much digital.
Okay. And when you say difficult, that is not such good news, Ken, for many people who are hoping to hear some good news from you today. But you know what,
Well, definitely. I mean, I don't want to be a prophet of doom. I always like to prefer to be an agent of hope. I think one of the big things that we'll notice is there'll be a whole layer of innovation that will come out of this. People will think differently. People might lose their jobs. That's one of sort of like the unfortunate realities. But people might also start new interesting industries, new interesting businesses that might also actually lead to much more fulfilling lives. So it's a moment of transition. And I always say when one door closes, another door opens. So for a lot of people, this could be the beginning of a new door opening, and people trying out skills that they had never ever tried before.
Well, Ken, as we talk about new doors, for someone who has lost their job, because many people have lost jobs, others, they have had to close down their businesses. What type of businesses would you say are ideal for anyone right now that someone can venture into based on your research on the ground and just your analysis of the current status?
Well, to answer that question, first of all, you might want to look at the economic survey that was released about 2 months ago. 1 month ago, that really talked about the performance of the economy in 2019. So obviously that's pre-COVID. And just looking at some of the statistics, some of the key growth sectors, we saw accommodation and food services, grew up by 10%. We saw ICT going up by 8%. Areas such as transport and storage going up by 7%. Wholesale retail was also growing at 6.6%, and construction at 6.4%. Some people criticize these statistics. People say sometimes these are government statistics which don't sometimes always reflect the reality on the ground, and maybe there is a case for that. But I can tell you for sure that the services sector tends to do very well in Kenya. It's the growth, all the 5 sectors that I've named to you, whether it's financial services, ICT, fintech, all these are services sectors. So we'll definitely see the services sectors are doing much better, and they tend to use digital platforms much more. But for me, I always say when you're thinking about which business to go to, obviously it's important to look at which are the growth sectors, but it's equally important to also ask yourself personally, what are my strengths and my weaknesses? Because yes, you can go into a sector such as fintech, that is a big growth sector, but maybe I don't have the skills, or maybe I don't have the strengths to cope in that industry. So I think the most fundamental question somebody has to do is to sit down with a pen and paper and really list down what are my key strengths and what are my weaknesses, and what kind of industries are aligned with my key strengths.
A question to you, Ken. Call them the coronavirus businesses. Which ones are succeeding? The businesses that are succeeding during this pandemic, which ones are they?
I mean, definitely businesses that had invested in some digital infrastructure. So you're seeing the delivery companies are doing very well. There's a lot of home delivery businesses that are coming up well. But you'll notice even businesses that had been there in the brick and mortar fashion. Think of a company such as Art Cafe, and look at how they've really transformed their business towards home deliveries, leveraging on their digital channels. They are an example of a company that had been very proactive at the very beginning, had invested in a digital infrastructure, and I think when their numbers come out, I will not be surprised to see they're one of the best performing companies in Kenya. Look at the apps that are coming up, the Glovos. Look at any company that offers delivery services right now is actually doing very well. So that segment that takes advantage of that reality, because also even when you go back to the traditional sort of like the pre-COVID days, people will want to do their shopping online. People will want their goods delivered at home, because one of the challenges we have in Kenya is traffic, congestion. So people will be like, I don't have to go to Naivas anymore. I can use the Glovo app and Naivas, buy all the Naivas goods and they can be delivered to my house. So that's a service right there that a business can offer and do very well. So I think it's really about thinking out of the box and preparing Kenyans for that new normal, as you say.
So we are saying, Ken, it's not a matter of what type of business it is, it's the strategy you're using to advance your business and grow your profits. So basically what I'm hearing from you is right now people should look into deliveries. You've talked about the service industry in terms of the restaurants, eateries, like the art cafe. You've mentioned there a few companies, but I'm also trying to understand. But let's talk about starting a business. In COVID, during this pandemic, where do you start?
Well, the first step is you need to sit down with a pen and paper, and you need to write down what are your strengths and your weaknesses. So, for example, I can say, I'm passionate about writing, I love traveling, so maybe I can begin a travel blog where I start writing about destinations that many Kenyans do not know about. Maybe I can get some sponsors, some hotels, some resorts to sponsor that. So that's a perfect business that's anchored on your passion, because the problem we have in Kenya is we have a copy-paste mentality. You see your neighbor doing one thing and you want to copy-paste it. I think the new thinking right now is you need to look inwards, inside of you, and ask yourself, in my short life, what are the things that I have done well? What are the things that have excited me? What are the things that other people have said I tend to do fairly well? And now how can I transform that into a business? So if I'm a writer and people say I'm a good writer, and maybe I love traveling, maybe I can start a travel advisory business, and I focus on domestic and international tourists who want to come to Kenya and need that curated advice on how to move around Kenya. That's already a service that could, and with the digital infrastructure, you could definitely have clients coming from abroad paying you in foreign currency, and also clients here in Kenya who want to maybe go beyond Mombasa, Nakuru, Naivasha, and try more. So that's a perfect example of a business that might be anchored on your strength.
Well, Ken, I think one of the questions someone would be asking right now is, where do I even get the motivation? Someone lost a job, their business closed down. Of course, there's the whole idea of, I don't even know what to do next. So where do you draw the motivation?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. It can be very discouraging to lose a job, especially a job maybe you had been in for a few years. Human beings tend to have difficulty with managing change, and sometimes it can be quite difficult, just the emotions that come with it. But one of the key things right now is we are all forced to stay at home. So it's a time of rest. First, we need to rest a bit. You need to have a clear mind. You sort of now need to detox from maybe those previous experiences. And now you have to sit down and now in your cool, calm element, start really asking yourself, what is it that gives me goosebumps? What is it that I truly care about or am passionate about? And you start writing those things down. Maybe I love baking. Maybe I love doing arts and crafts. Maybe I love doing jewelry. You start putting those things on paper. Then now you need to sit down now with a mentor. You need to sit down with a mentor, and you need to find not just one mentor. You need a whole range of mentors, maybe about 7 mentors. And you need to have maybe coffee with each one of them and tell them, hey, I'm thinking of starting a bakery, for example. I think I've been doing it socially and people say my cakes are incredibly good. Maybe it's time now I want to start that bakery. So you need to now talk to business mentors, business experts, and you don't start from far. I always say charity begins at home. Talk to people within your family setup. There's always a business expert in every, whether it's not a nuclear family, the extended family. talk to people in your neighborhood. Get somebody you trust. Get somebody who is of a reputable person, and start sharing your idea, with these people, and they start giving you tips on, maybe where can you locate it, how can you start, where can you get capital. The biggest mistake entrepreneurs do is they try to walk alone, and you don't want to walk alone. What you want to do is have a group of trusted, reputable people who can be helping you, coaching you, and telling you about how to use digital channels, how to have a sales strategy, how to raise capital. So having those mentors is one of the most important things for a businessman or business lady.
All right, so Ken, you've gotten now a business idea, you've gotten motivation like we've talked, and you've come down to writing down a proposal, what you want to do, the kind of business you want to do. And like you've mentioned, very critical there is the idea of having mentors, because you're not an island, you can't walk alone, especially in the business world. But I think the thing now I would ask right now is, you have the idea and you've put together everything. So how do you monetize that idea from, its infant stages to something that will generate an income or revenue for you?
Well, you have to understand that period is called the gestation period. This is the period between when you write the concept note, your business proposal, to the time you start making revenue. Now that period can be very short or it can be very long, depending on first, your skill, your ability to work with people, and also we also have to realize that business is also not for everybody. There are people who have a better orientation towards business than others. But what I can tell you, if you have that proposal, then now you start sitting down with experts in business. So you can look at, say, in my extended family, I have an uncle maybe who has done very well in business. Let me have coffee with him, let him tell me about his journey, and let him advise me. Maybe around my neighborhood, there is a business networking center. Maybe I can go and talk to a business expert, a business consultant, and such and such. Maybe I can start reading about global business, people who have done very well at the global stage. And this is where the internet comes in very readily. There's so many good stories of people who have started from scratch and have done very well. So I think the idea is to say you do not have the monopoly of wisdom. You need to start walking on the shoulders of other experts, tapping the wisdom of other experts. And that requires a lot of humility, because there's something called a founder's barrier. When the founder believes that he knows everything and cannot be advised, normally that's the beginning of the end of the business. But you'll find a founder who is humble, who is open-minded, and can easily take advice from other people and modify his business. Those people tend to do very, very well. So humility is such a big part especially when starting a business.
Well, Ken, just imagine perhaps there's a young gentleman or lady who now is saying, wow, Ken has given me the ideas of where to start, what to look at, but they're asking, so how do I access these experts? Because I need someone to guide me. Do you know of any persons or agencies or groups someone can actually be a part of, or, try and tap into the knowledge from that is affordable as well?
Well, I always say, don't think too far. I always say start from the very home setup. I always say, first of all, the step one has to ask yourself, within your immediate neighborhood, within your network of your family, whether it's your nuclear family or your extended family, there's always one person out there. It could be your mother, your father, it could be a distant uncle, it could be a second cousin, but there's always somebody who has done a bit of business. And they can always, that should be the first step, because they know you as an individual, they know your strengths and your weaknesses, and they'll tell you, I think you're onto something here, or I think you need to change this and that. So you need to exhaust those immediate networks first. I think sometimes people tend to get shy about maybe sharing an idea with somebody in their family, but sometimes that is free information, especially if that person has run a business, is not to be a reputable person, is a wise person. That is free advice for you that maybe another person might be charged, but they're giving it for you for free because they're your relative. Number two is now think in your community, in your neighborhood. Maybe you live in a particular area, and maybe there is a business networking. Like, for example, there's what these things that are called the business networking hubs. You know, you could always go there and you could network with other business-minded people. In fact, they keep saying you need to start now making networks with other people who run businesses, because the mindset of an entrepreneur is very different from the mindset of an employee. So you need to start acclimatizing yourself to building social networks around people who actually run businesses. Then you could ask yourself, what about in my county? Does Nairobi County have any entrepreneur resources? And if you actually scratch the surface, there are tons of business hubs where people go and present their businesses and such. So there's no, don't think of it that there's one person who'll give you the silver bullet. Say, let me have 10 mentors from different, some are global, some are Africa, some only look at East Africa, some are in my village, some are in my network, in my family. So you have to have that broad sense. But I always say, start with what you have. There's always something what you have, then build on to the next level.
Well, Ken, as we come to a close of this discussion, futuristically speaking, for many people who are starting businesses, some whose businesses are still running and, of course, albeit through little profits as compared to what they were getting before, what would you say is the future of business?
Well, the future of business depends on really much how much the entrepreneur shapes it. If a founder is very forward-thinking, is able to see how the landscape is changing, is able to take in new information and readjust the business model, those businesses will have a very bright future, because there is so much adapting we'll have to do. We'll have to adapt with new forms of sales, new forms of marketing, using social media, digital panels. So if you are somebody who you feel you are open-minded and you can adjust with the times, those ones will tend to do very well. For those who find it very hard to adapt, for those who find it very hard to change their notion on business, for them it might be a struggle. So my key thing is read, talk to people, research, reach out to us here at Mentoria if you need to. But the idea is, can you take new information and adapt it? Right. Those are the people who tend to do the best.
Okay. Ken Gishinga, thank you for your time and for your wealth of knowledge.
Thank you always.
All right. Ken Gishinga there, Chief Economist at Mentoria Economics, talking to us about starting a business, of course, giving us an overview look of what is happening in the world of business in terms of the impact of COVID-19. Some few remarks there of hope for those who are planning to start businesses or those who are still running their businesses. All is not lost. There's still hope ahead, even post-COVID. Well, this has been the Morning Cafe with me, Lengari. Indeed, it is always a pleasure to have you join us. I know that many of you have been watching today. I'll just sample a few comments, one or two, because my director tells me that we have run out of time. And just a moment, we have here some comments from... We have Priscilla Maura just commenting here on one of the discussions. Thank you, Priscilla, for watching today. Of course, we also have Martin Karogo. Good morning. I'm watching from Nairobi West. I love your morning show. Thank you, Martin. And of course, we also have Matete Jr. saying politicians must go back and deliver to Kenyans. Our president has that right to remove those who are not ready to work with the government. Of course, we also have Samson Omukia saying we are following from Eldoret. Thank you so much for all of you who have been watching throughout the show. We indeed appreciate you. Keep watching. Remember, the conversation does not end here. You can continue engaging us through our social media platforms. That is TV47KE on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. My name again is Lengari. Have a lovely day and God bless.